Hello and welcome to the second part of our webinar, What Tech is DevOps with Miki Druneva. We are super happy to have you here. Thank you for joining everybody. My name is Elizabeth. I am the founder of Fearless into Tech. And if you haven't heard about Fearless into Tech, we are an initiative driven by women for women with the mission to promote more female participation in the tech sector and to motivate others, despite of not having a technical background, to join into the sector and just deep dive and explore whether the sector would be something they would like to discover. And for that reason, we organize webinars. Normally once a month, we choose a subject that can be interesting for everybody to know about. It's about raising awareness of what is out there, because tech sector is very broad. There are so many parts of it, so many things to explore. So we want to give everybody the possibility to access this information for free, to discover on their own pace whether things might be interesting or not, also beyond buzzwords and things that you might get out there here and there. So that's one part of it. Another part of it is that we also organize learning groups for coding. So with the idea of being self-learners and having a safe space where we can explore all together whether coding would be something for us, again, despite of not having any technical background and just trying to break down those barriers. So this month, we're extremely happy to host Miki. Miki already introduced us to the world of DevOps last week. I would like to kick off by maybe introducing Miki first. If you please could you introduce yourself a little bit and also give us a little bit of a summary of the last session from your perspective.
Sure. Thank you, Ellie. So my name is Miki. Thank you for having me here and for listening. I'm an engineering manager at Templify, but my background is in DevOps development, and I'm also a certified Scrum Master. And I've been working in tech for the past 10, 11 years, roughly. So the previous webinar that we had, we delved in a little bit on what is DevOps, because it's hard to talk about DevOps and what a DevOps engineer does and what's the route into DevOps if we don't know what DevOps is in the first place. So if I'm to give you a brief summary of that, it's a mindset where in a culture where we try to break barriers between the different sections within a company. So we try to work all together and have increased transparency and communication, and for us to collaborate. So we have autonomous teams and with shared responsibilities. I know that might sound a little bit fluffy, but the idea around it is we have previously separate development team, and separately we will have testing team who are going to be testing the code which the developers produced, and we're going to have even more teams who are actually going to take this product and actually deploy it or make it available to customers. So these were all different segments of a company which were working independent, and it was a lot more about passing the ball over the fence rather than working together to have a smoother journey. So as you can imagine, passing back and forth is not a nice experience. So where DevOps comes along is let's all work together, make sure that we use the right tooling to actually allow us to maintain those barriers being down and having a more smoother transitions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miki. From my perspective, and I participated at the first part of the webinar last week, and I have to say, well, I've been working in the tech sector for now 1.5 years, a little bit longer than 1.5 years. And I am in a way an outsider to tech, in the sense that I didn't study anything related to IT or computer science. And it was more of a coincidence that I ended up in the tech sector, or I did, of course, actively do something to get into the sector, but at the end, like today, I work as a sales engineer, and that is quite a technical heavy position to have. And I must say that I have heard the term DevOps a lot of times. We're surrounded by all these terms and everything, and only when you did the talk last week, I finally understood how it all comes together and how the part of the job that I do in the organization also fits into that mindset as you described it very well. So I would definitely recommend everybody who hasn't had the chance to participate at this first session and who would really like to understand what's behind the concept and also get a look into the tools that Miki shared with us last week to watch the session. It's available on YouTube, and I'm sharing the link now in the chat. So you can just go and head over and maybe also share it with whoever you think might be interesting or could be interested in it or benefit from this. But for today's session, I think that the goal of the session today is to have like a more personal perspective of your journey into the tech sector, Miki. What's your story? How did you came to be where you are today? At Fearless into Tech, we have these ongoing conversations and discussions about what are the factors that motivate people to start early in during the even childhood or teenager time to get interested in tech. Like we see in a lot of cases that for males or for guys can be much easier to get that kind of interest, while for girls, at least in my own experience, in my own cultural background, it wasn't really a normal thing to have this exposure, or we just didn't have the chance. So I'm interested in hearing what's your experience with that, and yeah, where did you grow up? What was the first time that you thought, I like this, I would like to try this out?
That's a very good question, Ellie. So a bit of a background. I'm originally from Bulgaria, which is Southeastern Europe. And Bulgaria is one of those countries which had communism for a very long time. We weren't part of the Soviet Union, but it's still had communism until 1989. And as part of that, it's kind of inherited in our school system that everybody learns everything. So from your first grade all the way till 12th grade, we have 12 grades, students experience pretty much everything. So you can't, even in grade 12, if you want to or not, you're still studying biology, you're still studying mathematics, you can't avoid those subjects. So it's kind of like it gives you a very broad and round education. So for me, my journey started probably around 5th or 6th grade, when I actually we had a maths competition in class, and I was a little bit competitive at that point, and I really wanted to win it. So that's what got me into mathematics. And like the teacher was very engaging. So okay, whoever solves those questions fastest, lift your hand, and basically we would get a star or something like that. So that's what got me into it. And actually what drove me into computing and actually being interested in programming is it's later on in grade 8 I had the opportunity to actually see applied mathematics. So maths was still interesting, but actually seeing it applied and what you can do in terms of maybe drawing an animation which is moving across and actually calculating this and actually okay, this is the calculation for a circle, for triangle, and then how is that applied, and you can view it and you can interact with it. So making like a mini animation, that's where all my passion started, when I could see mathematics being applied, and that's what engaged me into going into computing. At the same time, it can be very dry, and after I graduated high school, I was like, okay, I enjoy mathematics, I enjoy computing. Hopefully, it's going to be the right path for me. But I can also understand, like, universities play a huge role, but to also some extent they hinder. So um, because most of universities are academically focused, they're focusing on that theory in computer science, and it's rather than the actual application. So it's very easy to get bored and to at the end question, why am I still doing this? And not getting the actual joy. So when I finished my university degree, I was like, what do I do now? It's like my passion had disappeared, because we had some practical projects which is hands-on. That's how I enjoy it. But with having research papers to write, that's not something I do or enjoy. And so actually it took me, it's after graduated, it took me some time to rediscover what is it that I actually enjoy doing. Is the graphical side of it? Is it the automation side of it? And what ended up driving me forward, where I did rediscovered in a way myself, is I don't like repetitive tasks. If I have to do something more than twice, I'll try and see how I can automate it, or like kind of figure out a smarter solution. So I was trying to get tickets for a concert, um, and they kept on selling out. So every time that there was one available, it was sold out before I was able to get it. And that happened 3 times. And I was like, okay, I'm going to actually write a script to actually buy me that ticket faster.
Wow.
And this is what set me off on the route towards automated testing, and then more like development and DevOps later on, and operations. But
Amazing.
yeah.
That's super impressive. That's super impressive. Um, it sounds like when you say it, it sounds so simple and it sounds so natural to be interested in mathematics and this. Like I think for myself, and from what I hear from a lot of our, people who participate in the community and who at some point get some interest into tech, is more like literally all our lives we've been scared of maths. So for myself, when I was a little girl, I hated maths, and we did have a class in mathematics at high school, a little bit of programming, like the floppy disk, learning what it is. Back then, floppy disks were an issue, right? We're talking about the 80s and beginning of the 90s. And it was just like, maybe part of it, like teacher wasn't engaging enough, neither in maths nor in the programming class. But also for me, like the idea of programming itself and the relation to mathematics scared me away from ever trying to get into that. So I would ask you, what would you like, if you think back to that time when you were young and interested in maths? Was it the same for your female classmates, or were they also that interested, that engaged? Would you think, or would you say that it was because of the teacher that they did such a great job of engaging you? Or what would you say were the main factors, and what would you tell a person like me who is like scared of maths and definitely not math affine? um, what would you tell them to actually get them interested in programming?
Um, hmm. So I think what is you're right. Maths can be scary, and if you don't have the right teacher, like if you don't get it if the teacher is not the right one from the start, it can make the subject very boring. And so having a teacher who is able to explain it in a good way is really important. The other thing is, at least in Bulgaria, most of the teachers are female. So would that be a maths teacher or programming teacher? Those are mostly females. So you can actually see that it's not a men's field. And you don't feel as intimidated like to approach it, because okay, your teacher's female, she knows it, so why can't you? So from that perspective, you get a really good example of inclusiveness in that environment. And because it's if I had a male teacher in programming, I don't think I would have sticked with it. I think um, um, it was especially because it is seen as a more of a boys area rather than women's. So it can be very daunting to be the only one in class. And I suppose that's the other thing which was plus for the Bulgarian education at that time and schooling, is that um, it was we had quotas, so for particularly for high school, so a class was consisting of 50-50 percentage wise main boys and girls. So the class was fairly even, so everybody would be going through that. So it wasn't just boys, it wasn't just girls, so we were all mixed together. So we would all be doing computers class, we would all be doing maths. So you weren't alone, and I think this is what is super important, is when you have someone there to help you out, just to bounce off ideas, or kind of go with you to a certain event, or like an additional course. Doing that with someone else, it can be that extra support which we need sometimes, especially when it's like we don't feel comfortable in the situation.
Yeah.
And if I'm to give an advice, is actually it's not the maths that is important here in computing, or in having a job into tech. It's not the math that matters. It's actually critical thinking and analyzing. It's like looking at a situation and being able to kind of pull it apart a little bit. So if you think about those yarns of wool, like
Whoa.
being being able to find out and sort it out. That's what it's about. Maths is one way of teaching those skills, but it's not the only
Mhm,
way. It could be from history, geography, economics. It could be anything. And you actually don't need an education in like a university degree to be good in programming or in computing. Actually, some of the best engineers I know actually don't have education in that, and they're
mhm,
really good at it. So um, it's don't hold yourself back because you're thinking, okay, and I didn't get into a degree, into computer degree, I can't do that. It's
mhm.
I have friends who've come from journalism background, chemistry, no education at all, who are in this field, and um, it's all about um, how you think, critical thinking, analyzing. That's what it's about. But and the thing is, you need those skills for pretty much any job. So yeah, you
Yeah.
you you kind of
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, no, that's right. Like those are exactly the kind of skills that you can actually transfer from other jobs into the tech sector or programming, or not even like the kind of hybrid position that I have as well. It's like really it comes down to being able to to have a structured way of communicating, bringing points together, and also untangling situations like this, kind of questioning why you're doing stuff, and this getting into this troubleshooting mentality, which is it's coming from asking why are we doing what we're doing, and can we do it in a different way in order to get uh, the outcome in a quicker way, in a faster way, or in a better way. Like keep improving. I would definitely agree with that. I find it extremely interesting that the Bulgarian context gave you that kind of start into your journey. Really, really impressed about it. I have to admit that I didn't have any information, any knowledge about Bulgaria and then the cultural and the social political context of it. And in the last panel, you mentioned that you went and studied in Scotland. Would you say that what you saw in Bulgaria, so you grew up in that context, it must have been normal for you, to have female role models, like you said, like teaching you maths, teaching you programming. Would you say that after moving to another European country that you kind of saw a similar scenario, or what has been your experience, because you are now also in Denmark, so you're obviously seeing a lot of different cultures and contexts. So what is what are your insights in that regard?
I would say that Bulgaria is an outlier because we still have that about communistic educational system. So even at university in Bulgaria, but then it's like, I wouldn't say 50-50 percentage wise in a degree between male and female, but it's still, there is a very strong female representation. When I went to Scotland, for me, it was a culture shock because I attended the University of Edinburgh, which is a fairly large university. So my course was around 120 students in the first year, and we were 20 women in it total. And that is also people who have not agreed to the degree. They're just taking some additional courses in computing. In reality, I think at the end of the year, we graduated. At the end of the degree, we were 5, 10, no more than that. There were people
Wow.
who ended up dropping off as well, but still there was a lot who didn't continue that, and there is, in terms of representativeness in the university or in general in the city, there weren't that many women in tech. So you could really like this is one of the reasons why I was like, am I in the right place? This doesn't feel right. We're so few. Am I alone in this? And it's actually in my third and fourth year that I found out another organization, which is non-profit, and they were trying to called Women Who Code, and they run similar events like every 2-3 weeks. They would have gatherings of women who are into tech and in town, and they would talk about technology, like what's the coolest things going on, for an example, in the front end things. But it was like a female community, and that was super exciting for me because I didn't feel so alone, and that's what kind of pushed me to continue going through it. And those communities have been vital for me to actually continue and proceed, and actually to get some of my first jobs as well.
Wow. We have heard that time and time again. When we have these webinars, these conversations, we have had guests working as front-end developers, as data scientists, as Scrum masters, different roles, from different places, different job titles, and the whole, a little bit like everything. But one of the things that almost everybody agrees on and comes up with is basically this the importance of having a community that supports you, or that you also can contribute to as well, but a sort of like-minded community in a way, especially for us women, because we're still like way too few in the sector. And I don't know, but I keep asking myself, and we in that Pure Listen to Tech, of course, we keep asking ourselves, how can we, as individuals, not only just like as women or men or LGBTQ, just like as humans and individuals, how can we turn it around? How can we contribute to making the sector more friendly for everybody, more inclusive towards everybody, but also like how can we ourselves um, go beyond these kind of barriers that we have built during the years mentally, stereotypes, etc., to actually reanalyze what tech means. Because one of the things that worries me nowadays is like we're moving into a world where we are surrounded by technology. We're using technology every single day. Most of us, we don't have any involvement at all into how these technologies are developed. And even if we are like you yourself are contributing directly to developing these kind of technologies that have an impact in our lives. Um, and if we go a step further and if we think about how how little variation there is in the sector in terms of who is actually designing the technologies, then I really get worried. And I really like talking to people like you who have all these insights, because we really want to contribute and do something. And it would be interesting to hear also from your job experience, what do you think that companies can do, individuals can do, different people, or from different perspectives to tackle this?
I think this is a multidimensional problem. Part of it is if you strip it back, at least of what I've seen in Western Europe, is that actually it's the beginning that becomes a problem, because actually you don't have that many people, that many girls interested from the lower grades into maths, or into sciences, into making that field exclusive. So first of all, your original pool is really really small, and additionally, it's in such a format, the education, that even if you want to um, pursue computing later on or pursue something else, it's like you feel like you're playing catch up, and it makes it really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, one thing is going into the lower grades and actually making it interesting for, and making sure that it doesn't sound like it's something only for boys, and nurture that talent to grow and continue developing, and showing them that there are some female role models that they can follow. And so that is one thing which is more on an educational level. And again, there's somewhat limited of how much we can do about it. But there could be like events which can be organized with the schools for people to visit, show them maybe
Mm-hmm.
little robots, and make them see that it's not all black dark screens and uh, and people locked into basements, mostly men.
Eating crisps and drinking soda, right? The
Exactly.
classic.
It's showing the more
Yeah.
creative side, showing them that okay, yes, there is part of it which is logical, analytical, but there is the creativity, as well, the opening that door. And in terms of what companies can do is showcase what is it that the skills people need, and making it a little bit more transparent in that regard. That
Mm.
okay, yes, you need to have some expertise in certain fields, but having junior positions, having internships, student assistants, where you can actually help that would be that is super useful. And hosting event like this one, sponsoring them, in terms of what could that be for venues or for pretty much anything like a conference format. I think that's something people can try and do.
Yeah. And in terms of working, so career development itself, you have had a couple of positions. Was it like from after you graduated and were among those 10 who actually managed to finalize the studies? Was it easy for you to find a job? Do you have the feeling that there is transparency in the sector in terms also of salary expectations, and that you and a person who's a male and has the same position is actually getting the same as you're getting, or what's your experience in that regard? And what would you recommend someone who gets like all excited about DevOps and has no experience at all on going into also that kind of consideration? Because I think that's a very relevant consideration when you are actually giving this kind of things a thought, a serious thought.
Oh, that's a lot of questions, Ellie.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to be very, very frank. It's getting into the tech field is hard, and it's hard because we face barriers, and in terms of we compare each other with male colleagues or people who we know, and and it doesn't help that um, there's been some studies that when a woman looks into a job ad, she needs to tick all of the boxes into the job ad to actually apply. While a male candidate, even if it's one thing that's from that checklist that they will do, they'll still apply. So there is that concept of we want to make sure that we get it, because maybe we get more easily disappointed in it. So, um, but it's important first from the employer's perspective to make sure that the job ad is not some crazy list of requirements, and that's something that I think the tech sector has been working on in the past few years. Having an inclusive language in the job ad, but also for women, it's important to, even if you don't think that you match completely the ad, apply, because the ads are normally generic. They're trying to be broad as possible. You might not be needing all of the things that which have been listed on it, because if you do, then you're a unicorn, one of the few. So even if you don't match all of the expectations, apply. Don't be scared of the rejections. It's an experience. It's the worst it could be is that they'll say no. We can ask them for feedback and then see what the company would say. It's like, okay, we would like somebody with more skills in certain area. That is going to be something for you maybe to work on and focus on if that's the role that you would be pursuing. But use you can use even the rejections to help you grow and learn. Um, so from that perspective, it's yes, there will be some knocks on the way, but that will make you, rather than taking them and just leaving, learning from them is the key here, where you ask, okay, you rejected me, why is that? What is it that more you would have wanted to see from my resume? And then you're actually ending up in a dialogue with the company, and it could be that, okay, if you have experience with this particular field maybe, or this particular item, you'd be a great candidate. And then maybe 6 months later you would have gained it, you can apply again and see what you hear from them. So it's use that to shape you and to grow in that regard, rather than take the wind out of your sails and see, I'm not good enough. That's not the case. Maybe that's not just the right job for you. It could be that it's unrealistic expectations as well, or that there is still room for you to grow. There is nothing wrong with that. And when we're talking about growing, tech is one of those things which is constant learning. Nobody knows everything. It's constantly changing and adapting. So um, it's a it's a good habit to develop. It's a good skill to have, is to be inquisitive, to be trying to find out, okay, how can I use something new, and staying on top of things, because that is going to come in very handy for you later on.
Would you say that it can help, like if you're entirely new to the whole sector and you're trying to transition from a sector very different to the tech sector into tech, do you think that it can help to start by, I don't know, like joining these communities like the one that you mentioned, or making some courses, or finding some champions inside of a company? You mentioned also the thing with internships, but I find it a little bit hard as well, because if I would think about myself when I came into the sector, I didn't land into the position that I am today straight away, and I wouldn't have been looking for that either because I didn't know it existed in the first place, right? So one of the things is like we don't know half of the things that are out there, and that could be a potential fit for you as a person and with your skills and experience. The other part is that even if you know and you don't have the experience, you just don't know how to approach it. And of course, you can try and apply. And I'm totally with you that we definitely have to get better at this, not trying to check all the boxes, but just like doing it and then trying it and learning from each experience. But there's just as much as we can do. And I wonder if you have any advice on how to go about it if you're really really new to it, and like a sort of strategy of combining what kind of tool set, or yeah, what do you think would be a good approach?
So I've seen multiple things available as options. So in Scotland, for an example, there are schools like coding schools where they would run things. It's four or no between 4 and 6 months courses, and they would give you a very round education, and that would prepare you for development. But it's actually those courses are based on things which you actually can find online for free, or for a lower cost. Like you can have things like Code Academy or Coursera, where you can actually, like, introduction to computer science or introduction to design or introduction to front end, and just like watching those things, and then not only watching but trying it. I think this is the bit which we tend to forget a little bit, is if we're approaching it from academic perspective of how we're taught in school. Okay, I've learned my lesson, I know this, but the question is, try it out, see what they've said, make sure that you put the practice in, and try and experiment, create it, make it your own. And those courses, those tutorials, some of them are interactive. They can be really useful into that. And then going to events and getting to know people and asking questions. Okay, I tried to do this, but it didn't work. So it could be something on the meetup for JavaScript, for an example, if you've tried to write something in JavaScript, and asking questions around that. And
Yeah.
not be scared about it. So using it in combination of courses, tutorials, practice, and meeting people to help out. Ideally, a mentor who can guide you through that. That would be the best. And in general, sometimes not all skills which are needed in tech you can find courses in. So, for an example, if you look into the role of quality assurance or quality assistance, depends on the interpretation here. The skill there is attention to detail. It's a lot about thinking scenarios, analysis, expected behavior, and actually. So what this role is about is if a development team has created I don't know, a website, and you get this website, and the question there is like, does it do what I expect it to do? So taking it and seeing, how can I break it, or what is it that I can do with it? That kind of mentality. So that is a different type of thinking, and it's actually very interesting. So it's a good introduction into tech without being too overwhelming. So that's where you would see a lot of women actually starting it in testing, in quality assurance roles, and then moving in towards more heavy engineering once they've realized, okay, I'm good with this. I'm actually I have the job, and I can, and actually I'm better than some of the devs which are giving me this code. I can fix some of this with what they've given, and that little by little trying to, if development is the career you want. Some people just enjoy breaking stuff, so seeing how they can take an idea and see if it works or not, if it matches, can they somehow exploit it. So for an example, okay, you have this about us field, which shouldn't be able to get more than 100 characters, and you find out that it can be 110. And actually, people get money for finding bugs like that on some websites. So there is another career out there.
Yeah.
So
or maybe writing scripts to get your tickets for concerts.
Yeah, exactly.
I will definitely come back to you on that, like when I'm trying to find tickets for something. That sounds amazing. You should definitely build a startup out of it eventually. I'm sure there is something like that that is still needed. But I'd like to open the stage at this point. Like maybe there are some questions from the participants here. I don't know. You can just like also either type them in the chat or unmute yourselves and ask directly if something comes to mind.
I'm just wondering if you ever get any like, not maybe weird reactions, but maybe some situations where you have to kind of establish yourself, your competence and how you deal with that. For example, I used to work in tech support, and sometimes I would find things that just, you could tell they just weren't programmed well. Like people were just not doing a good job in terms of thinking of all the ways how a user would interact with something. And then if you tell this to the engineers, they don't like hearing that, right? Because you're a woman, maybe you're younger, and then you go up and tell them how to do their job, and the reaction is not good. I was wondering if you ever encounter these situations at your job, and if so, how you learn to deal with them.
I've encountered that, but later on, what made me and I've seen that, and what actually got told at one point is actually it's not about that you're female, that you're younger. It's about how do we give feedback and receive feedback. There are people who really struggle with that, and I would say that men really struggle with accepting that they might be wrong. And it doesn't matter if it's come from a guy or from a woman. The fact that they have their child, their labor is not perfect is hard to swallow. So I wouldn't take it personally. I think what the reactions that I've seen is, for an example, when a woman reports an issue, yes, the guy gets defensive, and how can no, that can't be right. So a little bit of an ego playing there. If a guy reports it, it's like, oh yeah, dude, I'll check it out later. But it's again the problem of accepting that feedback and admitting that they've done something wrong. And I think that's something people can learn and grow and should be on their development plans.
And how would you phrase it, that feedback?
So for me, it's like I would say under this scenario, I would be expecting certain behavior. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet the requirements that I'm expecting. And that's all there is about it. And rather than some people like using ticketing systems which are somewhat anonymous. You just don't even know who it is that it's reporting it. That actually helps, because you don't look at who it is. You're seeing, okay, somebody has tried this scenario and we're having an issue, and it's black and white. So attaching screenshots, making it as complete as possible, and that is not to prove your point that you're right. That is to help engineers understand and see it actually. So actually maintaining that inclusive environment rather than having us and them. We're all trying to do the right thing. We're all trying to give the best software to the customer. So it's not a clash like that. We need to be working together.
That's a great way to put it. Absolutely. Any other questions maybe from you guys? anything you would love to hear from Mickey now that you have her?
I have one last one. It's more of a soft, like social question. Um, I haven't been in IT this long, but the more I get into it, the more I sometimes realize, but sometimes you feel a tiny bit out of place in terms of socializing. Like sometimes the topics at the table are so much about things that I'm not necessarily interested in. Like my old company, for example, it was always a lot about gaming, for example. And I'm just not the biggest gamer. Doesn't mean I'm not interested in tech. Do you experience that, especially being like in engineering? And if so, how do you deal with the social situations?
Yes, I've been there. That's for sure. What helped me in the beginning, particularly, is having a female friend in the group. So the two of us would actually start a conversation around a topic that we enjoy, and that's we try to kind of redirect to some extent the conversation. But having a buddy there, male, female, it doesn't matter. But sitting next to someone who you feel somewhat comfortable with, and you know that you can have a conversation, tends to help. You will, I think it's a test almost, as in, do you belong to the group if you can talk about certain topics. And you don't have to be an expert. Sometimes you just pick up things by listening from on the same table. I'm not into gaming either. At the same time, you end up learning from your colleagues particular the latest games or something like that, and it's like, okay, well, I know what to get from my friends for their birthday, like in 2 months' time. So taking it from an educational perspective rather than anything else, and even just listening in and chipping in. Okay, you played this game. How long have you played, or how much did it cost? Like, kind of those questions which might be interesting for you for one reason or another. Knowing that your colleagues are spending 50 hours a week on gaming, that gives you an extra perception of how important that is for them and how you can game the system.
I think I have one last question before we say goodbye, having a look at the time as well. You have obviously achieved quite a lot in your career already, and you are at the point where you actually have a lot of responsibility in the position that you have. What would be your advice to us who are working, like, not, I would say, beyond tech, beyond all of that, but what would be your advice to us in terms of how to get there, like how to develop our careers, how to move to up the ladder? How can you achieve that, apart from obviously performing well, doing a good job? But I think we're all sort of trying to do our best, but also reflecting that in our career development.
I would say find your passion. No matter how cheesy that sounds, it is the key here, because unless you're interested and passionate about it, it becomes a chore, having to go to events or having to listen to videos and tutorials. It can become grinding if you're not interested in it. Find out the real thing that you enjoy. Would it be design? Would that be something else? And turn it into your career. That's the it could be particularly into programming, but it could be something else. It could be getting women into tech. That could be a career by itself, and just putting the effort into it, and basically channel that passion in. Because at the end of the day, when you're interviewing someone for the job, that shows. It shows if the person cares about it, or it's just a job for them. And it does matter. It shows. And quite frequently you would find yourself, okay, should the candidate who knows the most but is kind of disengaged, get the job, or would it be the person who is engaging, passionate about it, but might not have as much experience and knowledge? Let me tell you, the second one is most likely to be getting the job. So that enthusiasm matters a lot, and channeling it and seeing where it takes you. Because again, for me, that's what ended up happening. For me, it was from starting from that script, I got into automation. And from automation, I went into build engineering because that's what sounded interesting. I was like, how does that work? And then, okay, I know how this work, but how do I take it to the next level? What is it the next thing that I can use it on? And it's actually pursuing it, like following that thread that is of what you find interesting. And I can't tell you what you find interesting. That's your journey. So the road is different for everyone. There is no universal path. And in making it personal is the best thing you can do.
That's a wonderful way of closing, I think. A great advice for all of us. Absolutely. Go out there and discover our own journey, our own passion, our own path. And it's awesome to have people like you, Miki, along the way, acting and serving as role models for us who are, in the journey and or getting into the journey, and having you, having you just support us, all of us. It's a great inspiration. So thank you so much for your time and for your support for 2 wonderful sessions. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon, I hope. Thank you, everybody, for joining.